How Can I Stick to a Budget? By James Fisher. Introduction. Sticking to a budget is one of the most challenging aspects of personal finance, yet it's essential for gaining control over your spending and achieving your financial goals. Whether you're trying to save for a big purchase, pay off debt, or simply manage your monthly expenses, the ability to stick to a budget is the key to your success. It's not about depriving yourself, but about finding a balance that works for you. In this guide, we will explore practical steps and real-life examples to help you stay on track with your budget. Chapter 1. The first step in sticking to a budget is understanding exactly where your money is going. This begins with tracking your income and expenses. It's easy to underestimate how much you're spending, especially on smaller, frequent purchases like coffee, snacks, or online subscriptions. To get a clear picture of your finances, spend a month tracking every single expense, no matter how small. Use a simple notebook, a spreadsheet, or a budgeting app to record everything. By the end of the month, you'll have a detailed overview of where your money is going. Take Sarah, for example. She was a teacher working full-time and thought she had a good handle on her finances. However, when she began tracking her spending, she was surprised to find that she was spending about $150 a month on coffee, lunch, and takeout. Though individually, these purchases seemed small, they added up significantly over time. Armed with this information, Sarah realized she could cut back without making huge lifestyle changes. She started making coffee at home and meal prepping for lunch. These simple changes saved her hundreds of dollars a month, allowing her to stick more closely to her budget. After you've tracked your spending, categorize your expenses into two main groups: needs and wants. Needs include things like rent or mortgage, utilities, transportation, and groceries. Wants include entertainment, eating out, shopping for clothes, or expensive hobbies. It's essential to prioritize your needs, as these are the non-negotiable expenses that keep your life running. By identifying your spending patterns, you'll have the information you need to make informed decisions about where to cut back and where to stay consistent. James, a freelance photographer, went through the same process. He noticed that while he was paying his bills on time, his non-essential spending was getting out of hand. He spent money on gas for unnecessary trips, and he often dined out or ordered takeout instead of cooking at home. By recognizing these habits, James could start making small changes. He began taking public transportation, cooking more meals at home, and cutting back on unnecessary purchases. This made it easier for him to stick to his budget and begin saving. Budgeting isn't about being perfect. It's about making conscious choices. Once you have an understanding of where your money is going, you can start to make adjustments. Be patient with yourself, as it may take a little time to change spending habits. The key is to stay aware of your financial situation and commit to making small, realistic changes that align with your financial goals. Chapter 2. Once you have a clear picture of your income and expenses, the next step is setting specific, realistic goals for your money. A budget is more than just a list of numbers. It's a roadmap to help you achieve what you want in life, whether that's saving for vacation, paying off debt, or building an emergency fund. Setting clear goals gives your budget purpose and makes it easier to stick to because you have a reason to be mindful of your spending. Start by identifying your most important financial goals. Be specific and realistic about what you want to achieve. For example, instead of saying, "I want to save more money," try setting a goal like, "I want to save $300 a month for the next 6 months to build an emergency fund." This gives you a clear target to work toward, which makes it easier to make decisions about how to spend your money. Mike, a software developer, used to struggle with saving because he didn't have a clear goal in mind. He had a vague idea that he wanted to save for a new car, but he wasn't sure how much he needed or how long it would take. After breaking his goal down into smaller, more specific pieces, such as saving $500 a month for a year, Mike was able to make a plan that fit into his budget. Each month, he reviewed his spending and made adjustments to ensure he was on track. Having a concrete goal made sticking to his budget easier and helped him stay motivated when he was tempted to overspend. When setting your goals, consider both short-term and long-term objectives. Short-term goals might include paying off a credit card balance, while long-term goals might involve saving for retirement or a down payment on a house. It's important to prioritize these goals based on what matters most to you. If you're in debt, Paying it off might be your first priority. If you're already debt-free, building your savings could be your next focus. Sarah, the teacher from earlier, used her budgeting journey to set several financial goals. After cutting back on her coffee and dining out expenses, she realized she could allocate that money toward paying down her student loans. Once she paid off her loans, her next goal was to save for a down payment on a house. Breaking down her goals into manageable steps helped Sarah feel more in control of her finances and made it easier for her to stick to her budget. It's also essential to be flexible with your goals. Life doesn't always go according to plan, and unexpected expenses can sometimes interfere with your budget. If your car breaks down or an emergency arises, you may need to adjust your goals or give yourself more time to reach them. This doesn't mean abandoning your budget entirely. It just means being realistic and adjusting as needed. Flexibility will help you stay motivated and keep your goals within reach, even when life throws a curveball. Tom and Rachel, a married couple, had to adjust their goals after having a baby. They realized that their original savings plan for a vacation would have to be postponed to make room for baby expenses. Instead of feeling discouraged, they reassessed their goals and decided to prioritize building a baby fund while adjusting their savings plan for the vacation. Being flexible allowed them to stay on track with their budget while still working toward their long-term goals. Setting goals is a powerful way to stick to your budget because it gives you something to work toward. When you know why you're budgeting and what you're aiming for, it becomes easier to say no to unnecessary purchases. Instead of seeing your budget as a restriction, you'll begin to see it as a tool for achieving your financial dreams. With clear goals in mind, sticking to your budget will feel more like a positive, purposeful step toward a secure financial future. Chapter 3. One of the most crucial aspects of sticking to a budget is learning to prioritize your needs over your wants. It's easy to get caught up in impulse purchases or the desire to keep up with the latest trends, but if you want to maintain financial stability, you must focus on the essentials first. Understanding the difference between needs and wants is key to ensuring that your money is being spent in the right places. Your needs are the basics, things you cannot live without. This includes housing, utilities, food, transportation, insurance, and healthcare. These expenses are necessary for your survival and day-to-day functioning, so they should always be your top priority. On the other hand, wants are things that are not essential to your basic living. This includes dining out, new clothes, entertainment, gadgets, or vacations. While these things can enhance your life, they are not essential, and if you're trying to stick to a budget, they should come second after your needs. Laura, a nurse, found herself in a difficult situation when she wanted to upgrade her smartphone. She had been eyeing the latest model, but she realized her current phone still worked perfectly fine. After reviewing her budget, Laura decided that spending $1,000 on a new phone wasn't a priority at that time. Instead, she used that money to pay down some credit card debt, which was a more pressing need. This decision not only helped her stick to her budget, but also reduced the stress of having debt hanging over her head. It's important to be mindful when it comes to spending on wants. A common challenge people face is rationalizing purchases by convincing themselves they deserve it or by thinking it's just a small, temporary expense. However, these small, frequent indulgences can add up over time and derail your budget. For example, buying coffee every day or ordering takeout multiple times a week may feel insignificant, but over the course of a month or year, these expenses can be substantial. Recognizing when you're spending money on things you don't truly need is a powerful way to stay on track with your financial goals. James, a freelance photographer, learned this lesson when he started reviewing his budget. He had been spending a lot of money on gas by taking unnecessary trips and eating out often, thinking that a quick meal on the go was harmless. But once he tracked his expenses, he realized that these habits were taking a bigger chunk of his income than he had realized. James made a conscious decision to limit his driving to essential trips and cook at home more often. By focusing on the things he truly needed, he was able to redirect that money into savings, which made sticking to his budget easier. Another way to prioritize your needs is to plan for big, non-negotiable expenses ahead of time. This includes things like insurance premiums, taxes, or medical costs. While these expenses might seem far off, they are often unavoidable, and planning for them in advance can prevent financial stress later on. You can set aside money each month to ensure that when these expenses arise, you'll have the funds to cover them without disrupting your budget. Tom and Rachel, the married couple, faced this challenge when they had a baby. The unexpected costs of diapers, baby clothes, and medical bills required them to prioritize their budget even more. They reassessed their expenses and decided to cut back on their entertainment and dining out to make room for the new necessities. By focusing on their immediate needs, they were able to stick to their budget while also ensuring their new baby's needs were met. It's also helpful to periodically review your budget and your goals. As life changes, your needs may shift, and it's important to adjust your budget accordingly. For instance, when Sarah, the teacher, paid off her student loans, she reallocated the money she had been putting toward debt repayment into savings for a down payment on a house. This shift in priorities helped Sarah stay on track with her long-term goals while still meeting her current needs. By focusing on needs first and being mindful of wants, you'll have a stronger foundation for sticking to your budget. The key is to always keep your financial goals in mind and ensure that your spending aligns with what matters most to you. By making conscious decisions about where your money goes, you can maintain financial discipline and work toward a future where you're financially secure and in control. Chapter 4. One of the most important habits to develop when sticking to a budget is regularly tracking your expenses. It's easy to forget about small purchases or think they don't matter, but these little expenses can quickly add up and derail your budget. Keeping a close eye on your spending helps you stay accountable and gives you a clear understanding of where your money is going. The more consistently you track your spending, the easier it becomes to identify areas where you can cut back and make adjustments. The first step in tracking your expenses is choosing a method that works for you. Some people prefer using pen and paper, while others prefer digital tools like spreadsheets or budgeting apps. There are many apps available that automatically sync with your bank accounts and credit cards, categorizing your transactions for you. This makes it much easier to see where your money is going without manually entering each expense. Popular budgeting apps like Mint, Inab, You Need a Budget, and EveryDollar can help simplify the process. Whatever method you choose, consistency is key. Sarah, the teacher we followed throughout this guide, started tracking her expenses using a simple notebook. She wrote down every purchase, no matter how small. At first, it felt tedious, but after a month of tracking, she realized she had been overspending on items like takeout coffee and snacks. By documenting her spending, she was able to spot these patterns and make conscious decisions to reduce those costs. The awareness she gained from tracking her spending helped her stick to her budget and save money for her long-term goals. Another benefit of tracking your expenses is that it helps you see whether you're sticking to the amounts you've allocated in your budget. For example, if you've set aside $400 for groceries, but find yourself spending $450, this insight allows you to adjust your habits before things spiral out of control. Similarly, if you've planned to spend $100 a month on entertainment but are consistently spending $150, tracking your expenses will help you realize that you need to reassess your entertainment budget. James, the freelance photographer, faced a similar challenge. He set a monthly budget of $300 for food and entertainment, but by tracking his spending through an app, he noticed he was often going over budget, especially on dining out. After reviewing his expenses, he realized that ordering delivery a few times a week was causing the overspending. By switching to cooking at home and limiting takeout to weekends, James saved money, while still enjoying the meals he loved. His app allowed him to monitor the changes, and he could see the immediate impact of his adjustments. Tracking your expenses also helps you stay motivated and accountable. When you can see how your spending habits align with your budget, it can encourage you to stay on track. It's much easier to make mindful spending decisions when you have a clear understanding of your financial situation. It's also important to track both fixed and variable expenses. Fixed expenses like rent or car payments are easy to manage because they stay consistent, but it's often the variable expenses, like groceries, entertainment, or shopping, where things can get off course. By monitoring both types of expenses, you gain a complete picture of your financial life. Another useful aspect of tracking your expenses is the ability to set limits for yourself. For example, if you're consistently spending too much on entertainment or impulse buys, you can set a hard limit for those categories in the future. If you hit your limit, you can't spend any more in that category until the next month. This can be an effective way to curb excess spending and ensure you stick to your budget. Tom and Rachel, the married couple with a new baby, used a shared budgeting app to track their expenses. As they juggled baby costs with other financial goals, they made sure to check their app regularly to see where they could cut back. They noticed that they were spending more on groceries than they anticipated, so they made adjustments by meal planning and shopping smarter. This small change helped them stay on budget without feeling deprived. It's also helpful to review your spending at least once a week to stay on top of your budget. A weekly check-in gives you a chance to adjust before any issues snowball. For instance, if you realize you're overspending on a category, you have time to make changes and avoid larger budget imbalances by the end of the month. By tracking your expenses, you can build a habit of being conscious of where your money is going. It helps you stay disciplined, avoid unnecessary purchases, and gain a better understanding of your financial habits. As you track your spending, you'll become more in tune with your money, which makes it easier to stick to your budget and stay on the path to achieving your financial goals. Chapter 5. A crucial element in sticking to a budget is learning how to manage impulse spending. It's natural to be tempted by a sale, an online ad, or the desire for something new, but these impulse purchases can quickly derail your budget if not controlled. The key to managing impulse spending is recognizing the triggers that lead to it and finding ways to prevent it from becoming a habit. Impulse buying often happens when we feel emotional or when we make decisions on the spot without considering the long-term consequences. For example, you might see a pair of shoes on sale and convince yourself that you need them, even if they weren't on your list or in your budget. These types of purchases can easily add up, and before you know it, you've spent more than you intended. To avoid this, it's important to become aware of the triggers that prompt these spontaneous purchases. Laura, the nurse, faced this challenge when she realized she was often tempted to buy new clothes when she walked into a store, even if she didn't need anything. After a few months of tracking her spending, she noticed that many of her unnecessary purchases were made during lunch breaks when she felt stressed or tired. She decided to change her routine by packing lunch and taking a walk instead of going to the mall, which helped her avoid these impulse purchases. By identifying the trigger, Laura was able to break the cycle and prevent future impulse buying. Another strategy to curb impulse spending is creating a shopping list and sticking to it. Whether you're going grocery shopping or buying clothes, having a clear list of what you actually need helps prevent unnecessary purchases. If you're tempted to buy something not on the list, pause for a moment and ask yourself if it's truly necessary. This simple step can make a huge difference in staying within your budget. James, the freelance photographer, used this strategy when he started doing his grocery shopping. He used to buy snacks and extra items that weren't on his list, which often resulted in overspending. Now, James writes down his grocery list ahead of time and makes sure to stick to it when he's at the store. If he sees something that isn't on his list, he takes a moment to decide whether it's something he truly needs or just a passing temptation. This small change helped James save money and stay on track with his budget. A helpful tool to avoid impulse spending is the 24-hour rule. When you feel the urge to buy something that wasn't planned for, give yourself 24 hours to think it over. During that time, reflect on whether the item is truly necessary, if it fits into your budget, and if it aligns with your financial goals. Often, the urge to buy will subside once you give yourself some space to think about it. If you still want the item after 24 hours, then you can decide whether it's worth the purchase. Tom and Rachel, the married couple with a new baby, implemented this rule when they were tempted by online shopping sales. They'd come across baby gear or items for themselves that weren't part of their budget, but by waiting 24 hours, they often realized the items weren't as essential as they originally thought. This pause in their decision-making process helped them avoid overspending and stay focused on their financial goals. It's also important to adjust your environment to reduce temptations. If you know that you tend to make impulse buys when you go to certain stores or browse certain websites, try to avoid those triggers altogether. Unsubscribe from marketing emails or follow brands on social media that encourage shopping sprees. You can also avoid browsing online shops when you're feeling stressed, bored, or emotionally drained, as these feelings can often lead to unnecessary purchases. Sarah, the teacher, used a similar strategy. She unsubscribed from email lists for stores that often offered discounts and promotions. This way, She wouldn't be tempted by sales or limited time offers. Instead, she focused on the items she genuinely needed, which helped her stay within her budget while still treating herself to occasional purchases that were in line with her goals. In addition, a practical approach to managing impulse buying is setting a fun fund in your budget. This is a designated amount of money set aside for things you enjoy, whether it's dining out, buying a new book, or indulging in a hobby. By having this separate category, you can allow yourself to spend on things you want without guilt, while still making sure that your other financial priorities are met. This way, you'll feel more in control and less likely to overindulge, as you know that your budget has room for these occasional treats. Laura, the nurse, set aside $50 a month in her budget for non-essential purchases. This money was hers to spend on things she enjoyed, without worrying about how it would impact her budget. Knowing that she had a set amount for fun spending helped Laura feel more in control and made her less likely to make impulsive buys that weren't part of her plan. Managing impulse spending doesn't require drastic changes, but it does take awareness and discipline. By understanding what triggers these purchases, planning your shopping, and giving yourself time to think before buying, you can avoid letting impulse spending take control of your budget. With these strategies in place, you'll feel more empowered to make intentional spending decisions, stay within your budget, and achieve your financial goals. Chapter 6. Building an emergency fund is one of the most important steps you can take to stick to your budget and maintain financial stability. Life is unpredictable, and unexpected expenses will inevitably arise, whether it's a car repair, medical bills, or an unexpected job loss. Having an emergency fund in place ensures that you don't have to dip into credit cards or loans when these emergencies occur. Instead, you'll have a financial cushion to fall back on, making it easier to stick to your budget and avoid going into debt. The first step in building an emergency fund is determining how much money you need. Financial experts often recommend having 3 to 6 months' worth of living expenses saved. This amount provides enough coverage in case of a job loss or other significant financial hardship. However, the ideal amount may vary depending on your personal situation. If you have dependents or work in a more unstable industry, you might want to aim for a larger emergency fund. If you're single with a steady job, you might be comfortable with a smaller amount. The key is to make sure your emergency fund can cover the basics: housing, utilities, food, and transportation during tough times. Sarah, the teacher, started her emergency fund with a modest goal of saving $1,000. She knew this wouldn't cover 3 to 6 months of living expenses, but it was a good starting point. She set up an automatic transfer from her paycheck to a separate savings account each month, so she wouldn't be tempted to spend the money. After several months, Sarah had built her emergency fund up to a point where she felt more secure and less anxious about potential financial setbacks. One of the main challenges of building an emergency fund is the temptation to spend the money on other things, especially when you're working with a tight budget. The key to overcoming this temptation is to treat your emergency fund as untouchable. It's not for vacations, new gadgets, or any other non-essential purchases. It's there solely for emergencies, and if you dip into it for anything else, you'll be defeating the purpose of the fund. To help stay disciplined, consider setting up your emergency fund in a separate account from your regular savings or checking account. This makes it more difficult to access and reduces the temptation to spend it on something else. James, the freelance photographer, struggled with this temptation early on. When his emergency fund reached $1,500, he started to think about using some of the money for a new camera he'd been eyeing. However, after discussing it with a friend, he realized that the camera wasn't an emergency and could be purchased when he had more disposable income. He decided to leave the emergency fund alone, and over time, his savings grew to a comfortable level. By sticking to his goal and keeping the money separate, James avoided the temptation to use his emergency fund for non-emergencies. Setting up a system to save for your emergency fund is crucial. If you try to save whatever is left over at the end of the month, you'll likely find that there's nothing left to save. Instead, prioritize saving by setting up automatic transfers from your paycheck into a separate account. This pay yourself first method ensures that the money for your emergency fund is put aside before you have a chance to spend it. Even if you can only contribute a small amount at first, consistency is more important than the amount. Over time, your emergency fund will grow, and you'll feel more secure in your financial situation. Tom and Rachel, the married couple with a new baby, prioritized building an emergency fund after realizing how quickly unexpected expenses could add up. They started with a goal of $1,500, which felt achievable. Every month, they set aside a small portion of their income, and after 6 months, they had reached their goal. Knowing that they had a safety net made them feel more comfortable sticking to their budget and gave them the peace of mind to focus on other financial goals. Another way to build your emergency fund is to look for areas in your budget where you can temporarily reduce spending. For example, if you have a month where you don't need to spend much on groceries or entertainment, consider putting that extra money into your emergency fund. By adjusting your budget and making small sacrifices in the short term, you'll be able to save more quickly and reach your goal faster. Laura, the nurse, did this by cutting back on dining out and other non-essential spending. For 1 month, she decided to limit herself to just 1 meal out, instead of the usual 3 or 4. The money she saved from these small adjustments was added directly to her emergency fund. By finding ways to save without feeling deprived, Laura was able to accelerate the growth of her emergency fund and get closer to her financial goals. Having an emergency fund allows you to weather life's storms without derailing your budget or relying on credit cards. It gives you peace of mind, knowing that you have money set aside for unexpected expenses. And perhaps most importantly, it allows you to continue sticking to your budget with confidence, even when things don't go as planned. The goal is not just to build an emergency fund, but to treat it as a necessary part of your financial security. Once you have this safety net in place, you'll feel more prepared for whatever life throws your way, and sticking to your budget will become much easier. Chapter 7. Setting clear financial goals is essential to sticking to your budget. Goals give you something to work toward and provide motivation to stay disciplined with your spending. Without clear goals, it's easy to lose focus and find yourself spending money without a clear purpose. Whether you're saving for a vacation, paying off debt, or building your emergency fund, having specific, measurable goals keeps you on track and helps you prioritize your spending. The first step in setting financial goals is to be specific about what you want to achieve. Vague goals like save money or get out of debt are hard to measure and don't provide the motivation you need to stay committed. Instead, break down your goals into specific amounts and time frames. For example, instead of saying, I want to save money, set a goal like, I want to save $5,000 for a vacation in 12 months. This goal is specific, measurable, and has a clear deadline, which makes it easier to stay focused and track your progress. Sarah, the teacher, decided that she wanted to save $3,000 for a vacation to Europe. She broke it down into smaller monthly savings goals, deciding she needed to save $250 each month to reach her target. By making the goal specific, Sarah knew exactly how much money she needed to put aside each month and could track her progress. The clarity of her goal made it easier to prioritize her spending and stick to her budget, knowing that the sacrifice now would result in a rewarding experience later. Next, it's important to set both short-term and long-term goals. Short-term goals are smaller, more immediate goals that help you build momentum, while long-term goals are bigger and require more time and effort. For example, paying off a small credit card balance might be a short-term goal, while saving for retirement or buying a home might be long-term goals. Both types of goals are important, and having a balance of both helps you stay motivated in the short term while working toward your larger objectives. James, the freelance photographer, set a short-term goal of saving $1,000 to pay off a credit card and a long-term goal of saving for a down payment on a house. He focused on paying off his credit card first, using the extra funds from his budget to reduce his debt. Once he reached that goal, he was able to reallocate those funds towards saving for a down payment. By achieving his short-term goal, James felt motivated to continue working toward his long-term dream of homeownership. Once your goals are set, it's important to track your progress regularly. This helps you stay motivated and makes it easier to adjust your budget as needed. If you're falling behind on a goal, you can make adjustments to your spending or savings plan. On the other hand, if you're ahead of schedule, you might decide to reallocate those extra funds to another goal or reward yourself with a small treat. Tracking your progress helps you stay focused and ensures that you remain committed to your financial objectives. Tom and Rachel, the married couple with a new baby, set a financial goal of saving $10,000 for a down payment on a house within 2 years. They tracked their progress monthly and reviewed their budget together to see if they were on track. Every time they hit a milestone, like saving $1,000, they celebrated the progress they had made. This sense of achievement kept them motivated and focused, even when things got tight. The couple found that regularly reviewing their progress helped them stay committed to their goal, even during difficult months. It's also important to be realistic with your goals. While it's great to aim high, setting goals that are too ambitious can lead to frustration if you can't meet them. For example, if you set a goal of saving $10,000 in 3 months on a tight budget, that might not be feasible. Instead, break your larger goal into smaller, more achievable steps. This way, you're more likely to stay on track and feel a sense of accomplishment along the way. Laura, the nurse, had a goal of paying off her student loans in 2 years. She initially tried to make large payments every month, but found that it was too much to handle alongside her regular expenses. After reevaluating her goal, she adjusted her payment plan to a more manageable amount and extended her timeline slightly. While the new plan meant she would pay off the loan in 3 years instead of 2, it was still a realistic goal that she could achieve without compromising her financial stability. Lastly, make sure to review and adjust your goals as life changes. Your financial goals might shift as you experience different life events, getting married, having a baby, changing jobs, or moving to a new city. These changes may affect your budget and financial priorities. Revisit your goals regularly to ensure they still align with your current situation and adjust them if necessary. This will help you stay on track and make sure your budget reflects your changing needs. Setting financial goals isn't just about numbers. It's about creating a sense of purpose for your spending. When you know exactly what you're working toward, it's much easier to resist temptation and make choices that align with your financial priorities. By setting clear, realistic goals and tracking your progress, you'll stay motivated, disciplined, and on track to stick to your budget and achieve your financial dreams. Chapter 8. One of the biggest challenges to sticking to a budget is the pressure to keep up with friends, family, and societal expectations. Whether it's dining out at expensive restaurants, buying the latest gadgets, or going on lavish vacations, it's easy to feel like you need to spend money to keep up. The reality is that living within your means often requires making difficult choices and resisting social pressures. However, learning to manage these expectations while staying true to your financial goals is a key aspect of sticking to a budget. The first step in resisting social pressure is to become comfortable with saying no or suggesting more affordable alternatives. If your friends invite you to a pricey restaurant and you know it's not within your budget, don't feel obligated to say yes just to fit in. You can politely decline or suggest a more affordable option. For example, instead of going out for a fancy dinner, suggest grabbing coffee or having a potluck dinner at home. This way, you can still socialize and enjoy the company of friends without overspending. James, the freelance photographer, used to feel guilty when his friends went out for expensive dinners and asked him to join. He didn't want to seem cheap or miss out, but he realized that his financial goals were more important than keeping up with the crowd. Instead of always agreeing to go out, James started suggesting less expensive alternatives, like cooking dinner together at someone's house. His friends appreciated the idea, and he was able to stay within his budget while still maintaining his social life. Another way to handle social pressure is to communicate your financial goals and constraints with those around you. Letting friends and family know that you're working towards specific financial objectives, like paying off debt or saving for a vacation, can help them understand why you might need to decline certain activities or suggest cheaper alternatives. In most cases, people will be supportive of your goals and may even offer to help you find ways to save money together. Sarah, the teacher, found that talking to her friends about her savings goals made a big difference. She explained that she was saving for a trip to Europe and needed to cut back on non-essential spending. Her friends were understanding and suggested activities like hiking or free events instead of pricey outings. By being open about her goals, Sarah was able to enjoy time with her friends without sacrificing her financial objectives. When it comes to family, the same principles apply. While it's tempting to spend money on gifts, vacations, or outings to please relatives, it's important to set boundaries and stick to your budget. This might mean finding more affordable ways to celebrate holidays or family birthdays, such as handmade gifts or planning a low-cost family gathering. The key is to find a balance between maintaining relationships and not overspending. Tom and Rachel, the married couple with a new baby, were faced with pressure to spend money during the holiday season. Their family traditions often involved expensive gift-giving and big holiday meals. However, they knew that their priority was saving for a down payment on a house. So, they decided to set a budget for gifts and family gatherings and communicated their decision to their families. They even started a new tradition of giving homemade gifts or contributing to a family potluck meal instead of spending money on elaborate presents. Their family was supportive, and they were able to stay on track with their financial goals without sacrificing family time. It's also important to recognize that societal expectations often create an illusion of necessity. Just because something is trendy or because everyone around you seems to have it doesn't mean it's something you need. Whether it's the latest phone, designer clothes, or an expensive car, these things may offer short-term satisfaction but don't contribute to long-term financial security. Being mindful of this can help you resist the urge to make purchases simply to fit in. Laura, the nurse, had always felt pressure to have the latest tech gadgets, especially after seeing friends and coworkers with the newest smartphones and tablets. However, after a careful review of her budget, she realized that keeping up with trends was costing her more than she could afford. Instead of upgrading her phone every year, she decided to keep her current phone for a few more years. She also started buying more practical items that aligned with her values and financial goals. This shift in mindset helped Laura save money and feel more confident in her financial decisions. Sometimes social pressures can even come from your own expectations. It's easy to get caught up in the idea of what your life should look like owning a big house, driving an expensive car, or taking lavish vacations, based on what you see in the media or on social media. But the truth is that your financial journey is unique, and it's okay to take a more modest approach if it helps you stay within your means. The key is to align your spending with your values and priorities, rather than trying to meet an external standard. James, the freelance photographer, had initially felt envious of his friends who owned large homes and luxury cars. He realized, though, that he was more interested in traveling and having experiences than owning material possessions. As he focused on his long-term goal of saving for a house, he began to let go of the idea that he needed to have all the latest things. Instead, he found joy in simpler, more affordable experiences, like weekend trips or exploring local attractions. This shift in mindset allowed James to stay focused on his goals while still enjoying his life. Learning to resist social pressures and stick to your budget requires a shift in mindset. It's about understanding that your financial goals are more important than temporary satisfaction or trying to impress others. By setting clear boundaries, communicating openly with those around you, and staying true to your priorities, you can successfully navigate the pressures to spend and remain committed to your budget. Remember that living within your means is a long-term investment in your financial health, and the freedom it brings will be worth it in the end. Chapter 9. One of the most effective strategies for sticking to a budget is tracking your spending. Without understanding where your money is going, it's easy to overspend or miss opportunities to cut back. Tracking your spending allows you to see exactly how much you're spending in each category, so you can make informed decisions about where to allocate your funds. By staying on top of your expenses, you'll be able to make adjustments before things get out of control. The first step in tracking your spending is to know where your money is going. This may seem simple, but many people are surprised by how much they spend on non-essential items. Coffee runs, takeout, streaming services, and impulse purchases can add up quickly. To get an accurate picture of your spending, start by recording every purchase you make, no matter how small. You can do this manually with pen and paper, or you can use budgeting apps and tools that automatically categorize your expenses. Sarah, the teacher, found that she was spending more on coffee and lunch than she had realized. She used a budgeting app to track her expenses and was shocked to see how much she spent on daily coffee runs and takeout. After tracking her spending for a month, Sarah realized that cutting back on these small purchases could free up money for her vacation fund. She started making coffee at home and packing her lunch, which helped her save a significant amount without feeling deprived. There are several methods for tracking your spending, and the best method depends on your preferences and lifestyle. Some people prefer to use pen and paper to record their expenses in a notebook, while others prefer digital methods like spreadsheets or budgeting apps. There are many apps available that can sync with your bank account, credit cards, and even cash transactions. These apps categorize your spending automatically and provide reports that can help you spot trends and areas where you might be overspending. Tom and Rachel, the married couple with a new baby, decided to use a budgeting app to track their spending. They found that it was easier to stay on top of their finances when their app automatically categorized their expenses, such as groceries, utilities, and entertainment. They set limits for each category and received alerts when they were close to overspending. This real-time feedback helped them adjust their spending habits and stay within their budget. Another effective method for tracking your spending is to use the envelope system. This system involves taking out a certain amount of cash for each spending category, such as groceries, entertainment, or transportation. Once the cash in the envelope is gone, you're done spending in that category for the month. The envelope system is a great way to ensure you don't overspend because it forces you to be conscious of your spending limits. It's also a more tangible way to track your money, since you can physically see how much you have left to spend. James, the freelance photographer, started using the envelope system to control his discretionary spending. He set aside $200 a month for entertainment and dining out, and once that money was gone, he knew he couldn't spend any more. While the system felt restrictive at first, James quickly learned that it helped him stay focused on his financial goals. By keeping his spending in check, he was able to direct more money towards saving for a down payment on a house. Regardless of the method you choose, it's important to review your spending regularly. This can be done weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, depending on how often you want to stay on top of your finances. Regular reviews allow you to identify areas where you're overspending and make necessary adjustments. For example, if you find that you're consistently overspending on dining out, you might decide to reduce the number of times you eat out each week or find less expensive restaurants. Laura, the nurse, made it a habit to review her spending every Sunday. She would sit down with her budgeting app and check her expenses for the week. When she saw that she was spending too much on entertainment, she decided to set a stricter limit for the following month. By regularly reviewing her spending, Laura was able to keep track of her progress and stay on target with her financial goals. Tracking your spending also allows you to set realistic budgets for different categories. When you track your expenses over time, you'll begin to see patterns in your spending habits. You may realize that you're spending more on groceries than you thought, or that you need to allocate more money for transportation costs. By identifying these patterns, you can make more accurate budget forecasts and avoid unexpected shortfalls. Tom and Rachel found that tracking their spending helped them allocate money more effectively. Initially, they underestimated how much they would spend on baby-related expenses. However, after reviewing their spending over a few months, they adjusted their budget to reflect the true costs of raising a child. By being proactive in tracking their spending, they were able to stay on top of their finances and continue saving for their down payment. While tracking your spending is important, it's also essential to be flexible with your budget. Life happens, and sometimes unexpected expenses arise that throw off your plans. The key is not to get discouraged if you overspend in one category or one month. Instead, adjust your budget and spending habits for the following month. If you're on track with your goals overall, a small setback shouldn't derail your entire budget. The key is consistency and the willingness to adapt when necessary. Sarah, after tracking her spending for several months, had one month where she overspent on utilities due to an unusually cold winter. She didn't panic, but adjusted her budget by reducing her entertainment spending for the next month to make up for the difference. By staying flexible and making adjustments as needed, Sarah was able to stay on top of her budget and reach her savings goals. Ultimately, tracking your spending is a powerful tool for sticking to your budget. It provides you with the clarity and awareness you need to make informed decisions about your money. By regularly reviewing your expenses, setting limits, and adjusting your budget as needed, you can stay on top of your finances and work toward your financial goals. Whether you use an app, pen and paper, or the envelope system, the most important thing is to stay consistent and stay engaged with your budget. Tracking your spending may seem like a lot of work at first, but the rewards are worth it. You'll feel more in control of your money and more confident in your ability to achieve your financial objectives. Chapter 10. One of the most important skills for sticking to a budget is learning how to prioritize your spending. In a world full of temptations, it's easy to get caught up in the moment and make impulse purchases. However, prioritizing your spending ensures that the most important aspects of your life, your financial goals, needs, and values, are met first. By identifying your priorities and sticking to them, you'll be able to make conscious choices that align with your goals, even when faced with temptations. The first step in prioritizing your spending is to distinguish between needs and wants. Needs are things that are essential for your survival and well-being, like housing, food, and transportation. Wants, on the other hand, are things that may add comfort or enjoyment to your life, but are not strictly necessary. Understanding the difference between the two helps you allocate your money wisely. When faced with a choice between a need and a want, your budget should reflect the priority of fulfilling your needs first. Tom and Rachel, the married couple with a new baby, learned the importance of prioritizing their spending early on. With a baby in the house, their needs changed. Diapers, baby food, and medical expenses became top priorities, and they had to reassess their budget. They realized that some of their non-essential spending, like eating out or buying new clothes, needed to take a back seat for a while. By adjusting their priorities, they made sure that their baby's needs were met while still working toward their goal of saving for a home. Once you've established your needs, the next step is to identify your financial goals and prioritize them. Whether you're saving for a down payment on a house, paying off debt, or building an emergency fund, these goals should take precedence over discretionary spending. While it's important to enjoy life and have fun, staying focused on your financial goals ensures that you'll have the resources to handle unexpected situations in the future and achieve long-term stability. Sarah, the teacher, had a strong desire to travel, but her primary goal was to save for a home. She made a conscious decision to prioritize saving for her down payment first, even if it meant putting off vacations and other luxuries. By staying focused on her goal, Sarah was able to save enough for her home in a reasonable amount of time. Once she achieved that goal, she could shift her focus to travel, knowing that she had laid the foundation for her financial future. It's also important to recognize that not all needs are created equal. For example, you may need a car to get to work, but that doesn't mean you need the latest model with all the bells and whistles. Sometimes, we convince ourselves that certain wants are actually needs. By taking a step back and evaluating your spending, you can identify areas where you might be overindulging or making unnecessary purchases. This allows you to make adjustments and ensure that you're spending your money on the things that truly matter. Laura, the nurse, found that she was spending more on her car than she needed to. Her car was reliable, but it was an older model, and she had been tempted by the idea of upgrading to a newer car with more features. After careful consideration, she realized that her current car still met her needs and didn't require a large monthly payment. By choosing to keep her car for a few more years, Laura was able to reallocate that money toward her savings goal of building an emergency fund. In addition to prioritizing your financial goals, it's also important to set limits for discretionary spending. While it's perfectly fine to indulge in occasional luxuries, it's essential to set boundaries to prevent overspending. For example, if dining out is important to you, set a monthly limit for how much you're willing to spend on restaurants. Once you reach that limit, find other ways to enjoy meals, like cooking at home or having a picnic. Setting clear boundaries for non-essential expenses helps you avoid guilt and ensures that you're staying on track with your overall budget. James, the freelance photographer, loved to dine out and enjoy the local food scene. However, he knew that eating out too often could derail his savings plan. He decided to set a monthly budget of $100 for dining out. Once he hit that limit, he would cook at home or invite friends over for potluck dinners. By prioritizing his financial goals and setting limits, James was able to enjoy his favorite activities without compromising his budget. One of the keys to successfully prioritizing your spending is learning to delay gratification. In today's society, it's easy to give in to instant desires, whether it's buying the latest gadget, going on an expensive vacation, or upgrading your wardrobe. However, delaying gratification and focusing on long-term goals can lead to more fulfilling and lasting rewards. The ability to say no in the short term can open up opportunities for larger, more meaningful achievements down the road. Sarah had always dreamed of owning a home, but the process of saving for a down payment required sacrifices. She had to pass on vacations, limit her shopping, and cut back on some of her favorite activities. However, when she finally purchased her home, the sense of accomplishment and security she felt made the sacrifices worth it. The ability to delay gratification allowed her to achieve a major milestone in her financial journey. To make prioritizing your spending easier, it's helpful to create a budget that reflects your values and goals. A well-structured budget will show you exactly how much money you can allocate to each category, including both essential and non-essential expenses. By creating a budget that aligns with your priorities, you're more likely to stick to it and make intentional choices about where your money goes. Tom and Rachel created a budget that prioritized their baby's needs and their savings for a home. They set specific amounts for baby-related expenses, debt repayment, and savings goals, and anything left over went toward entertainment and dining out. This approach allowed them to stay focused on what was truly important while still enjoying the occasional treat. Prioritizing your spending is an essential part of sticking to a budget. By distinguishing between needs and wants, focusing on your financial goals, setting limits for discretionary spending, and learning to delay gratification, you'll be able to make decisions that support your long-term financial success. When you prioritize what truly matters to you, you'll find that sticking to your budget becomes much easier, and the rewards of your hard work will be well worth the effort. In conclusion, sticking to a budget is a journey that requires discipline, awareness, and a clear sense of your priorities. While it may seem challenging at times, the rewards of managing your money effectively are invaluable. By understanding the importance of tracking your spending, setting clear goals, resisting social pressures, and prioritizing your financial needs, you can create a sustainable and realistic budget that works for you. The key to success lies in consistency and flexibility. It's not about perfection, but about making conscious decisions that align with your values and long-term goals. Life will throw unexpected expenses and temptations your way, but with the right tools and mindset, you can stay on track. Whether you use budgeting apps, spreadsheets, or manual tracking methods, the most important thing is to stay engaged with your finances and adjust your plan when needed.